This is What If Deadpool and Wolverine were in The Boys Part 1. Now, I last left off on my Deadpool What If was introducing Deadpool into the Boys lineup, but I feel like it would be a lot interesting if I took both of these characters, Deadpool and Wolverine, and threw them into the Boys world, and how would this affect all of the things that are happening in the Boys universe? You're probably wondering, which season am I going to throw these guys in? What equivocal point should I throw Deadpool and Wolverine into the Boys universe? And I was thinking maybe season 2 or season 3, but it would be season 1, because season 1 is the best opening part to introduce Deadpool and Wolverine, and also throw them into the mix of the new soups, and it would be the most grounded take to introduce everything. Now, let's just dive right into this fanfiction. We start our story off with episode 1 of The Boys, and we will see a whole entire, bus of police officers or police chasing down an American bank department, truck. They would have been taking money, and it would basically be a robbery, as they would have been stopped each by Queen Maeve. And Queen Maeve would have stopped this armored truck robbery, saving 2 kids. Them being saved, and Queen Maeve stopping it all. Now, Queen Maeve would have made a lot of ruckus, but still saving those 2 kids and stopping the robbery. Now, what would happen is, a couple of the, robbers would have been pretty much dropped. I mean, they would have been killed, bro. I mean, dropped like a sack of pockets. I mean, goddamn. But we see that Queen Maeve and Homeland would have taken care of all these robbers and taken them down really easily and really quickly. Now, what would happen is this whole entire event would have been on camera and on TV, as we see that, we could switch to Huey, as Huey would have been cleaning up the cameras, and this can switch to Huey's life and his point of view in this whole world of soups existing. Now, with this happening, we will see that, Huey would have been trying to sell a Sony, as he would have just tried to sell her it, saying that it was a pretty good transmitter, APTX, those guys, and basically just talking, his shit. He was trying to sell this thing, but him eventually getting interrupted by his girlfriend, as his girlfriend, Robin, they were talking. What would happen is they would have been talking and basically seeing the relationship, as they were a really good couple and they loved each other very much. Robin would have been about a foot off of the sidewalk, and let's just say the same thing would have happened. Let's just say a certain black speedster would have ran through another black woman. Black and black crime. I'm right now. I'm playing. I'm joking. But what would happen is, Robin would have still died. Nothing in this part of the story would have changed too much, because Deadpool and Wolverine wouldn't be in the universe yet. But talking about that, let's jump into what would happen and how would Deadpool and Logan come across the Boys universe. During the whole entire event, after Logan would have helped Deadpool basically destroy the Time Ripper, things would have changed very different. With the Time Ripper being destroyed and the antimatter and the dark matter blowing them to smithereens, what would happen is, they would have been teleported into a whole different existence. Them teleporting themselves into an entirely different multiverse and jumping into a completely different point in literal existence. Jumping into a timeline outside of the TVA's restriction and basically jumping into the Boys universe. The Boys universe would have been chaotic at best, because in this universe, the Boys weren't supposed to be so brutal. In this universe, Homelander was actually supposed to be a Superman, a genuine good person. But since the TVA couldn't get into this universe was off the map. This universe being cruel and dark and realistic is exactly what it's become. What happened is, we would see that Deadpool and Logan would have found themselves in an alleyway looking around. Deadpool would have basically said, "Did we save everything?" And Deadpool and Logan basically saying, "Maybe we did." As they would have started to look around, being confused on what was going on, then eventually seeing a bunch of cameras and commercials and everything like that on billboards and literal cars driving around, and seeing people with merch of people like A-Chain and Homelander on their shirts, then realizing that this economist universe has some sort of superheroes, right? And then they would have been walking around in their uniforms, Deadpool still being in his outfit, but Logan being shirtless, as kids, not kids, but let's just say, families would have walked by. Let's just say the moms would have been a little bit, I don't know, looking a little, their eyes were wandering. Let's just say a lot of angry husbands being made. But what happened is Deadpool and Logan would have been making their way around the city, eventually seeing the whole event happening with Robin and Huey and A-Chain running past them. Deadpool would have honestly instantly got a jolt of what was happening, since, Deadpool is a fourth wall breaker and looks at the camera saying, "Holy crap! A crossover!" But enough of that. So we get switched a time gap around, let's just say, 2 days. As these 2 days gaps, we get a little bit of a summary or a montage in between, and we get switched to, let's just say Annie Mortuary story. Starlight's whole entire thing happening would have happened the same. Nothing too different would have changed from the plain story, but let's just say the whole thing about Robin's funeral, A-Train's apology, everything spiraling Huey into this pure depression and hatred for Soups would have been happening exactly the same. But the whole thing would have changed when we would see that Wade would have been living with Huey. Pretty simple. Huey and Wade would have became friends, as Wade would have made friends with Huey after seeing that whole thing, as he would have actually showed up at, Robin's funeral talking to, Huey. He would have made humorous jokes with Huey, trying to make him cheer up, and they would have worked. And Huey and Wade becoming somewhat of friends. Logan would have gone on his own, telling Wade that come and find him when he finds out how to get us back home. But for now, he needs to figure out more about this world, and he walks off into the distance. Logan's whole story will be changed a lot of other things off the map, but right now we'll be focusing more on Deadpool's whole, let's just say, hand into Huey's downfall and spiraling into him finding the boys and everything like that. Now what happened is Deadpool would have been friends with Huey, seeing the whole thing with Huey being very depressed about Robin's death and kind of becoming hateful towards Soups in general. But Deadpool not telling Huey about how he's a Soup just yet, just telling him that he has cancer and stuff like that. So what would happen is basically Starlight would have been shown to the public, and Starlight would have eventually been given the opportunity to be on a talk show and be the next member of the Seven. The Deep would have introduced her to the stage, basically, introducing her to the world. What happened is we get that Huey would have gone back, or would have gone to a gas station, seeing A-Train drinks and all this advertisement of A-Train, and being very pissed off about how everyone's loving this dude, but he killed the person he loves the most. Huey starts looking around, and this whole entire gas station, the store, is filled with nothing but A-Train merch, back to posters, drinks, freaking condoms, for God's sakes. What does this guy not own? What would you not bid on this? What could you possibly get that wouldn't have this guy's face on it? Huey's starting to have a panic attack and starting to freak out. Huey would have eventually started to pass out and basically having a heart attack, hyperventilating and everything. Huey would have gone on his own and started to run out of the gas station. What would happen is we could switch to Annie being introduced, or Starlight being introduced to the rest of the Seven and being brought to Vought Tower. As basically, we get shown that the whole thing about the Deep and the Seven would have been portrayed as something good, something better, right? But the whole spiraling dark side of these Soups and how they're so high on their high horse would have changed, would have literally broken Annie. As Annie would have been confused on what the heck, well, let's just say the Deep was saying. Now, Annie would have told the Deep that he had a little bit of a crush, a schoolgirl crush on him when she was younger. Now, what happened is, well, the Deep would have started to talk to Annie, and their whole conversation would have happened the same. But that whole thing with both between them, let's just say that horrible thing that would have happened. And this is kind of why the reason I kind of hate the Deep a little bit, but I still want him to have a redemption arc or try to become a better person. In a little bit of a sense, become a better person slightly. But in all honesty, that's probably not going to happen in the real series. But I might do it in this fan fiction, make him a better person. But what happened is the same thing would have happened. Annie would have been forced to do something that she didn't want to do, but she had to do it. She was scared and she wanted to be on the 7 so bad, because this is the whole point. This is the whole thing she's been training for, doing her entire life. But yeah, that's what would happen. Yeah, so this would have happened. And let's just skip away from this. But yeah, let's just say he says, how bad do you want to be in the 7? And this is just, I mean, what the hell, bro? I mean, what in the hell? She does her little light flickering thing where she always does it and she never does anything, bro. I mean, come on, Annie. Come on, Annie. You're just literally, that's the equivalent of just taking a gun and flaring it around when it is empty. Like, bro, what? But basically, later on in the episode, we see that, well, Butcher eventually comes to Huey. And we see they talk, and Huey is kind of been given a recruitment by Butcher. Butcher's trying to tell him about the real deal about the soup community and how the soups are brutal and weird and just crazy individuals. He sees more footage of A-Train and trying to be filled with the rage, and Butcher trying to aim his rage as a weapon towards the soup community and especially towards A-Train. We see that Starlight comes across Queen Maeve and starts to talk to her and trying to vent to her. What happened is they would have been called out, or Translucent would have been called out because he was just spying on them. Because, well, I guess Queen Maeve has been in the same tower with him for so long, she knows where he is. But yeah, Translucent is just there. So, yeah, Translucent's just there watching the entire thing. Now, what happened is we get switched away from their whole situation but we get a little bit of a dive into what's going on in the boys' universe. And we see that Butcher and Huey are talking. Them eventually getting interrupted by Wade. Wade would have started to talk to them, trying to figure out what was going on, as Huey would have introduced his friend to Butcher, saying that we're just talking about something, as Deadpool would have said, I know who exactly you are, Butcher. I'm here to help. I hate soups with a passion. Now, Deadpool's saying all this because he knows for a fact the soups in this world are very corrupt, cruel, and honestly horrible people. Deadpool isn't a hero or a saint himself, but he knows he's better than most of the people in this lineup. He has a little bit of morals, and at least he doesn't manipulate women into doing what they want or what they don't want to do to get what they want. So he's not like the Deep, or he's not as cool and psychotic and weird as Homelander, but he is still a psychopath at heart, or still just a weirdo and a kind of a crazy person, but not too crazy like he's not freaking Joker level, but Deadpool's Deadpool, you know him, the fourth wall breaking, Merc with the mouth, you know him. What would happen is we get switched back to Huey being given a opportunity by Butcher, but Deadpool telling him to take it as he'll keep him safe, and Deadpool telling him to keep a secret that he's actually a former FBI agent and he knows how to fight, so he'll keep him safe if he needs it. Now, Deadpool is lying to him, but if everything goes south, Deadpool already has his gear from the last movie, like his adamantium blades and his guns and his pistols and everything like that. What would happen is we get switched to Madeline Stidwell as she's talking to Mayor of Baltimore, as they're talking and talking and talking. But eventually, they are kind of being, let's just say, looked over by Homelander. Let's just say Homelander's whole entire situation happening would have been looking a little bit crazy. Now we can switch to Huey talking to Starlight, as they wouldn't know each other, but him just talking to her and kind of finding her attractive and kind of falling for her a little bit, seeing that she's very funny and charismatic and needs help. But they talk and talk and talk, and eventually we get switched to Butcher talking to Huey later on in the day. After that would have happened, we could switch back to the 7th Tower, and this is where the story would really change, us introducing the boys and everything like that. Now, what would happen with Logan's story? Logan being off the picture for a little while now. Logan would have actually been in the 7th Tower at this time. Logan being kind of a bodyguard or a muscle for certain people in the Vought Tower. Now, he would have been outside the door, as he would have just been kind of there just to be there, trying to keep anybody outside of the room, since this was going to be a private council and them talking to Starlight and introducing her into the League of the Seven. Now what happened is Starlight would have walked in there, her seeing Homelander for the first time. Now Homelander would have basically introduced the whole entire group to each other, as Homelander basically would have started to just talk to everybody. Now, they would start to talk and talk and talk, and everything would have been going on, and the Deep would have been kind of, well, let's just say, threatened by Starlight. But what would happen is Noir, Translucent, and all the rest of the members of the Seven would have been shown. Now, pretty much, let's just say, Translucent was basically talking about the millions of dollars that are out of our pockets, everything that's happening with the Seven and everything like that. Now, pretty much, they're talking and talking and talking, and we can switch away from their whole story and point of view. But we're going to be switched to what's going on with Deadpool and Huey. Now, we see that Butcher looks more into Deadpool and see that he doesn't really exist, but he has a feeling about Deadpool, that he needs to be put to the task, see if he's actually worth keeping on the team. So, they put him on the same mission as Huey. Huey goes in there as an intern, and Deadpool stays behind as a muscle to keep him safe. As Butcher doesn't know about how he's in there yet, but Deadpool's just there watching from afar in the tunnel vents above the conference room with the 7 members. As he's watching and waiting, is something about to go down or not, as we see that something's going down. Now, they start to talk, and Butcher overhears, and basically, well, Huey's starting to talk and talk and talk around. Eventually, him being basically talked about, as he has a conversation with the security guard there that's actually replaced with Logan. As they start to talk a little bit, but let's just say he kind of just tells him to shut up, bub, and to keep to himself. Logan's just keeping there, as we see that, well, he sees A-Train, and he still sees A-Train as a bloody covered mess. The same person he saw for the first time, the first person he thought was his hero, he saw them covered in his girlfriend's blood. And he was hyperventilating, he was confused, he was shocked, but he wanted to talk to A-Train about, how great he is and everything like that, and basically saying thank you for the apology, blah, 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 blah. But his smile quickly fades away after what happened and after them walking away. Now, he asks if I can go use the bathroom, as he basically takes out his little thing and starts to use it to, do something. But with that whole thing, the whole situation happening, let's just say something would have happened. With Huey slipping up and dropping the bug, so Translucent would have saw the entire thing. Him just being a creep and chilling in the bathroom. He would have watched the entire thing, finding Huey as a suspect, seeing him as a very suspect person. Now, Huey would have written the documents he needed to write down or sign, as he would have basically planted the bug there in Vought Tower, or the Vought stand, as he would have went back on a drive with Butcher. Now, Deadpool would have been following quickly after them in his entire gear, tower or building to building, watching from afar, making sure nothing really happens. But at this point, he kind of forgets that Translucent comes behind them at this point in the story. Now, what happened is they would eventually find their way back at the pretty much, well, let's just say, place. As I'm going to be skipping over the whole thing with Baltimore's president or government or mayor or whatever and Stedman. Basically, the same thing would have happened. But you'll see that Butcher and Huey would have started to get absolutely handed to their booty cheeks by Translucent. Deadpool would have jumped in, kicking through the door, and basically starting to slash back to back to back to back to back. Him kicking Translucent down into the floor as Translucent would have gone back up, saying, "Who the heck are you, bro?" And basically saying, "Do you think I'm a freaking idiot?" Him starting to literally pretty much call him out, saying that you planted a bug, as they would have about to get blasted. So what would happen is, well, Deadpool would have started to absolutely drop Translucent, especially after Translucent got literally clapped by him getting pretty much rammed into a wall by Butcher, because Butcher would have drove into him. Now, what happened is Translucent and Butcher and Deadpool would have started to fight each other, as Deadpool would eventually stab Translucent with, well, the adamantium blades in the foot, kicking him on the forehead and spitting blood on his face. Now, Butcher and Translucent would have started to fight back to back to back, and Translucent would have been electrocuted by the end of the fight by Huey, actually. Now, Huey would have eventually went on with Butcher and Deadpool and, well, everybody, as they would have kind of became, I guess, acquaintances. Now, pretty much, Huey, not Huey, but, what was it? I'm sorry, Butcher, Jesus Christ. Butcher was well, about to go off on Deadpool, but Deadpool would have told him that he's here to help. So he literally just took down a member of the Seven, and he's literally in it with you guys now. As he would have sheathed his blades, telling them, let's get going. Now, Translucent would have been pit in the back of their trunk, and they would have started to make their way down to, well, you know, they would have become a kind of a truce, but we end off the episode there. But we actually get cut with the end credit scene after what would happen with the president or the mayor being absolutely kaput with his kid by Homelander. We see that Logan from afar is watching this off from Vought Tower out of the window, because it's a pretty clear sight from the pretty much tech place. As Deadpool watches Logan watches Deadpool do his whole thing, as Deadpool kind of notices that Logan's from afar. He looks back at him and they look at each other, as Logan just scoffs and walks away. Now what happens, we end up the series there. Now I know it was not a lot of Deadpool or Wolverine action, but part 2 will go off with a bang, because a lot of people will be murdered, a lot of people will be killed, and a lot of soups will be a lot, and I mean a lot, dead. So I'm going to end off here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and as always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.